First of all, thank you guys all for joining this IGEL Community webinar. We have a great show for you today. We really have no agenda. I did write down some questions. Brian's going to talk a bit about VMware and what's going on over there, which I'm really looking forward to. VMware's been, amazing, and they have an amazing group of folks. They have Brian over there, Sean Bass, which I think the world of Sean. Ron Oglesby, which is another person I think the world of, and just a bunch of other great folks, and they've made a lot of progress over the past years. So we'll get we'll learn about all that stuff. But we also have Bill McCarthy with us, and Bill's an amazing man too. He started with Citrix in '95. So he's an old Citrite and has been around and done all that and more. So Brian and I are just kids compared to Bill, not in age, but in the experience, right? So that being said, I'm really looking forward to it. So I just did the agenda. We're going to talk to Brian, and then we're going to go over to Bill at the very end. Bill's going to be part of it. He's going to ask some questions also if he feels. It'll be a fun conversation. But then Bill's going to do a more formal thing around the VMware and IGEL relationship and some of the great stuff we're doing together, because it really is interesting and really great stuff we're doing together. I want to share that with you. We always have upcoming events, although I must confess we don't have any yet scheduled yet for next year. I must be lazy. I don't know. I have a few things in mind. I just haven't figured out exactly which ones yet. So stay tuned for that. But we do have one more meetup this year, which usually we do one per month. But now December, we figure now let's do two, which we have Matthias Haas, the IGEL CTO, with us to basically do a 2020 recap and talk a bit about what's coming in 2021. And we're also going to be doing quarterly meetings with Matthias, where he talks about the previous quarter and then what's coming in the next quarter. So sort of an ask the CTO anything, and that's going to be great because if there's one guy at IGEL that technically knows everything, it's Matthias, right? So looking forward to those. If you're not an IGEL community member, please join us. The community is really amazing. We have over 5,200 people now. We have 150,000 messages posted. And we're not just a IGEL community. We discuss everything and then some. And we have some great folks in there too. So please join us. Join.igelcommunity.com. We have a nice little pretty website. And then, of course, we have other events, not just the meetups, but we also do some other technical stuff. And in 2021, I have a huge surprise for everyone. And then we're also going to do a really cool meetup in 2021, or we're going to do a bunch of new instructional type of meetings, how-to things coming soon. So stay tuned. This is a Q&A. This isn't Ask Brian Anything. This is a conversation, almost like a podcast in some ways. We really have no clue, but it's also an Ask Brian Anything, and we want you guys to participate as much as we want to participate. So please feel free to ask questions. But I added this slide because everyone throws the questions in the chat. I don't know, Brian, if you get this problem too, but everyone uses chat, and don't do that. Use the Q&A piece so we don't miss them. And then I'll field those questions and shoot them over to good old Brian. So on that note, let me stop my screen and let me close down this thing. And Brian, what would you like to maybe talk a bit about what's going on at VMware and bring us up to date?
Yeah, I'm just getting myself registered at the IGEL community. So I finished that registration.
Awesome.
I thought I was
a member.
I thought I was a member, but hey, if you say I'm not, so I will be 5201.
52.
Yeah, it's first of all, thanks for this invitation. Thanks for the opportunity. I love events and doing things like this because there's no real prep, right? It's just kind of like, in my case, roll out of bed, flatten my hair, make coffee plus backup coffee, and just come down to my basement where I am right now, and just kind of hang out and chat. And that obviously has been, since February. That's been our lives. I joined VMware. Gosh, it's been. We're getting on almost 3 years. It was beginning of 2018, and it's funny because first of all, I never would have saw myself at VMware, right? There was such a hardcore Citrix community that we were talking about earlier, like Bill, Doug, me, the others, kind of late 90s, early 2000s. And, through the 2000s, kind of Citrix sort of grew in popularity, and then VMware kind of entered the space. And obviously we were running a lot of our Citrix servers on VMware servers. And all that sort of stuff. And then VMware entered the VDI space. And I feel like VMware's VDI of 15 years ago was like kind of janky. And we were like, we're Citrix, please. We're grown ups. We got this. I don't know. It's just like VMware is like kind of fits and starts when it comes to EUC. Obviously in the data center, VMware was always like pretty rock solid and everyone loved them. So, I was doing BrianMadden.com and I left there in 2016, took a couple of years off. And then when I came back to the world to figure out what I wanted to do and started looking around, and Sean was at VMware CTO, and Gabe and Jack were still at BrianMadden.com. They're both at VMware now, also talking about this, what VMware was doing, and I was pretty psyched. And I'm like, Horizon, I don't know, like VDI, really? Do I still want to be doing VDI? And the cool thing is, I think the big reason I joined VMware is because it's not all about VDI. And VMware, this is not because of me. This is why I joined VMware. 3 years ago, probably about 5 years ago, VMware started down the path of Workspace ONE and said, look, let's manage everything, all your end user computing as a single platform, including managing your physical Windows laptops, your physical Macs, your iOS, Android, all those devices, as well as your VDI instances, and then wrap the whole thing in a layer of like intelligence and security and automation and monitoring, management, all that kind of stuff. And that was their vision. And I was like, yes, that sounds good. It's actually kind of funny because when I joined, I was like, wow, that's really great. Like, why does I feel like I don't know about that? Like, how does no one really know about that? And they're like, well, Mr. Blogger, podcaster, video presenter, here's where you come in. And to be honest, what we're doing now, so I work, so Sean Bass, who a lot of you know, he's my boss. Sean is the CTO for end user computing at VMware. And there's an office of CTO. There's about, 10 or 15 of us in that department, I guess. And we're all kind of doing different things. And my role is sort of looking at what we're doing and product direction and sort of what the industry is doing and talking to customers, and talking to partners, and just sort of packaging up into stories and, I don't know, just talking to different people and making sure that, how would I say it? Like, if I talk to a customer and hear something and they have a great idea, I want to take it back to product management, vice versa. And that's what we're kind of doing. So we're seeing like it's chipping away at little things. We're starting to see some pretty big customers doing modern management of Windows 10. I mean, I thought that, SMS/SCCM would kind of never go away. And we're actually starting to see like SCCM being replaced with full modern management. We're obviously in a big battle with Microsoft, like Intune versus Workspace ONE. Although actually I say that, we've kind of changed a little bit too, because from our standpoint, a lot of stuff we do on top of Windows to manage Windows 10, if you use Intune, you can have VMware Workspace ONE on top of that. Because I think Microsoft and a lot of the vendors are going down the path where you have to manage their products with their own platforms. Like you have to use Google to manage, Chromebooks. You have to use Microsoft Intune to manage Windows, that kind of thing. And then we'll sit on top of that and kind of, tie it all together. But it's all those like the non-VDI, non-traditional use cases that have been most interesting to me, just because I think I spent like 20-ish years of my job doing what would be more like VDI. So getting into like the physical device management and that kind of stuff, and like the intelligence and like tying it with the HR and like what it means to work and all that sort of thing, has been where I've been spending a lot of my time recently. So yeah, that's a quick little ramble. There's a lot of things to sort of dig into, but that's kind of the quick update. If there's one takeaway from this, I hope everyone knows this now, but it's VMware. We're not just Horizon. With VMware EUC, we're more than VDI. We're more than RDSH. We're looking at managing the physical devices and your applications in addition to all the virtual environments, and to manage the entire EUC estate. So that's what we're doing.
Hey, Brian, we had a question. I posted something in the IGEL community about, hey, if you guys have any questions for Brian, let us know. And someone said, hey, did you leave TechTarget to join VMware? Did you know when you were leaving TechTarget that, you were going to join VMware?
Absolutely not. So there's about a 2-year gap in between. So I left TechTarget in 2016, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was kind of bored. Like I had no complaints about TechTarget or anything, but it was just at that point I had been doing. I mean, Doug, it's like you with DABCC, right? I've been doing BrianMadden.com for like 14, 15 years, and it's great fun, and like I'm very like what an awesome job. But it's kind of like, okay, another VMworld, another Synergy, another Tech Ed. Here's the blog. Here's the podcast. Hey, what are your updates this year? Walk into the vendor booth. How's it going? And after like 15 years of that, it's like kind of the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. And so, and I'm 15 years, make room, make room so that like the DJ. Look at what DJ Esselman is doing. Look at what Jeroen not Vendekamp. Look at what Johan van Amersfoort is doing. Like these younger folks who are doing really interesting things. Like we're the old growth. We need to get like cleared out. So I kind of chilled out for a year and a half, 2 years, and didn't know what I wanted to do. And not working is also boring. So after that, I was kind of ready to go back. I honestly was thinking like, man, just get me a job at like one of these big vendors like Google or Amazon or something like that, and just park it and chill, right? I was thinking like maybe go to Europe or go to Asia and just, I don't know, this is 4 years ago, right? Like 5 years ago, maybe go to Hong Kong and get some rando job from Microsoft. I don't know. I was looking at that kind of stuff. And as I was poking around, I ran into Sean Bass, and he was talking about what VMware was doing. And I had not even considered VMware at all. And when they started talking about it, I was like, but it's kind of funny. I did not jump at VMware. Like they talked about what they're doing, and I was like, VMware, man, really? Like, I feel like I could go to Amazon or Google. Wouldn't that be cooler?
VMware is pretty big too. I mean, the problem with VMware, if I could say the problem, is that someone of age will look at VMware as a smaller company, but VMware's not a small company. VMware is a giant company. I was chatting with somebody not long ago. Yes,
30,000 employees.
With somebody not long ago, and they're like, they have products I don't even know. It's such a behemoth now that it's not just your hypervisor and EUC. It's so big.
Oh yeah, and if you look at like we have multiple different business units, and we have obviously the hypervisor and platform stuff. There's all the storage, all the networking, and like that's a whole other group that does. It was NSX and SD-WAN, and I don't even know what they do. Right? Sure. There's a whole security group with our acquisition of Carbon Black. I mean, it's crazy. Like we acquired Pivotal. We acquired Pivotal and Carbon Black on I think the same day or the same week or something like that. And those two acquisitions combined were like $5 billion. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, like wait, our little VMware can buy $5 billion worth of companies in the same week. What? Pivotal, look at that. Pivotal is now the core of our modern application platform business unit, right? So writing like serverless apps and all the Kubernetes and Tanzu stuff, and all the multi-cloud, because now you can run VMware vSphere platform on Azure, on AWS, on Oracle, on Alibaba, on who else am I forgetting? All the clouds, right? So it's huge. And when I watch the VMware keynotes, all the announcements from other BUs are all news to me also. I'm just like an attendee, like everyone else, being like, wow, like the networking, talking about now like smart NICs, the smart network cards. I don't know if you've heard of these things. I never heard of these before VMworld this past year, like 2 months ago. And they talk about smart NICs, and my mind is blown. And there's like, we got like people doing this cool stuff, and I didn't even know this existed.
Well, so maybe you can explain what a smart NIC is.
Dude, I'm super psyched about this. I feel like if I leave EUC, this is what I want to do next. So basically, the network card, it's essentially putting an ARM processor on a network card. And so think about how like a traditional server works, right? Like you have all your like PCI bus, your PCI expansion cards, and on the PCI bus, you plug in network cards, storage controllers, like RAID controllers, cache. You plug in all these things on the PCI bus. Well, now imagine that your network card, you put a CPU on the network card, and that ARM CPU, you can actually run vSphere. You can run ESX on the NIC. And so this allows you to do, so that's a separate ESX instance from the one running on your server.
Sure.
And so now that ESX instance running on the NIC, that allows you, if you want to do bare metal stuff on the server, you can control the server that way via bare metal and get all the benefits of a hypervisor, but on bare metal. But also you can do things like, hey, how does a GPU plug into a server? It's a card that plugs in, right? Well, if you got a smart NIC in the bandwidth, and there's a GPU over there, boop, boop, you need GPU, boom, you got the GPU on your server now, even though it's not even on your server. You need more storage, you need more capacity. So imagine that a server now, instead of being a box that has all these components and that's virtualized, it's like your whole rack, your whole room, your whole data center is, you can build VMs that are like, oh, I got some storage here, I got some capacity. Now look at, as we're getting into custom silicon, and there's like ASICs for doing like, oh, you're doing this kind of encoding, H.264 encoding, beep, add an H.264 encoder like real time into your VM, use it for 15 seconds, and then take it out again. And so the NIC is kind of the hub of all this sort of stuff. We're also seeing a new type of processor come out in the world, which is called a DPU, data processing unit. So you've got CPU for central processing, you've got GPU for graphical processing, you've got a DPU, which is data processing, which takes all of the stuff that was historically done like in in like your RAID controllers and all that kind of hardware, and that's built into like custom processors that again are put in these cards, and then they're allowing, you can sort of like pull components together to build servers out of all these pieces that are going to exist as a VM, and they could be ephemeral. Maybe it only exists for a few seconds. Maybe it's a few microseconds. I mean, it's just boom, 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 boom. This is not all there yet, but that's kind of like the vision for where this is going. These smart NICs are real though. That's actually real and out today. You can run ESX on those today.
Wow,
it is
cool.
It's insane. The data center architecture of like 10 years, you combine that plus all the custom silicon, like, now it's almost like every single task you need to do, you can really make custom chips to do it. And it just screams low power, the world's crazy, man. And so that's why,
Very
like,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question, which, and maybe you just answer it, but there's probably a bunch of things. So what excites you about tech today?
Oh man, that's a great question.
It doesn't have to be UC, of course. I mean, anything, right? We had you at Disrupt a few years ago, and you talked about IoT, and that was very exciting. I think that we'll all have an IoT question in a little bit because that's something to go down to. But
yeah, it's for me personally. So ironically, I am not like tech guy. Even in my house, I'm low tech. It's not smart home. I don't have every device and all these things. I'm not a billion gadgets and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually trying to go like minimize my screen time and get back to doing like older school kind of stuff. So, I mean, the biggest tech in my life personally is pinball machines. And so I like playing pinball, but those are that's 50-year-old technology. But I think on the work side of things, like I said, the tech that excites me, I mean, my number one answer is what I was just mentioning, the smart NICs, and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that's pretty interesting to me is the concept that, the applications that people are creating nowadays, the idea can kind of run anywhere. And if it's a vSphere platform, that's great, but I'm not even talking about a VMware sort of thing. It's just the idea that all the ideas of looking at where the different pieces of the application should run and what makes sense to where they are to the user. Because Microsoft now and Amazon, they're doing all these availability zones all over the world where they want to cover, I think AWS wants to cover the entire US or as close as they can, the whole US with data centers that are single digit milliseconds of latency away from your users. So now think about what that means, because we always talk about VDI and, oh my gosh, I need latency of try to be under 100 milliseconds, under 200 is doable. And it's if you have a 10 millisecond or less latency to everyone that you need to serve, what does that do? This is why we're seeing these video games online and all the major cloud vendors have these video game streaming platforms, which by the way is very awesome for us in VDI land, because all of the protocol enhancements that they do, to make Amazon Luna and Microsoft with Google Stadia and Microsoft Xbox. No, wait, what's it called? Xbox, the Microsoft Game Stream, whatever they're called. They help all of us too, right? Because it's just remoting, computing, and graphics and all that sort of thing. So I think the cloud spreading it out into the neighborhoods, if you will, and getting stuff that can run closer to the users on the edge, and then making your applications smart enough that they can sort of recognize what needs to run where, and then wrapping some intelligence and automation around that to say, hey, Azure has a sale for the next 4 minutes on this on this type of CPU. They've got some downtime. You can get it for a 20% discount, and boom, boom, your workload goes from AWS to Azure for 12.5 seconds, and then goes back to AWS again because it's cheaper over there. And let the whole thing kind of monitor and operate itself. That is really, really, really fascinating to me. I have nothing to do with any of that. That's not even an EUC thing that we're doing at VMware, right? That's just the world is going in this direction. And the whole thing of the cloud too, I think that we're starting to see the cloud is not only remote, this whole hybrid environment where I've got some nodes that are in my office, some nodes that are in the cloud, whether it's a vSphere thing, whether it's AWS outposts, whether it's Azure Hub or Azure Stack, I forget which one it's called now, where you've got essentially local cloud nodes in your office. I don't know, and it just runs where it makes sense. That to me is the most interesting thing with IT right now, is how we're really, it's like Skynet or the Borg, right? Where it's billions of processors, and there's all over the place, and we can run everything where it makes sense, where it all kind of works out best. God help us when this thing becomes sentient, but hopefully I'm dead by then.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I will get into on-prem versus cloud in a little bit, because that's a really good subject. We have a couple questions from the audience, and I want to make sure we ask these. First of all, this is a good question. I actually heard this one a few times inside the community. Have you seen any performance increases with Horizon 8 with Teams and Zoom? Very techie question, but it's probably the number one question asked within the IGEL community today is configuration of Zoom or Teams within devices today, right? I mean, COVID.
Yeah, we are. So first of all, so Horizon 8 is primarily a version number change. Like we were on the Horizon 7, and then it's like 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and we got to like 7.12 or 7.13 or something like that. We're doing Horizon releases quarterly, right? So so Horizon 8 is not like a fundamental rewrite, or just not a fundamental architecture. It honestly probably could have been called Horizon 7.15 or whichever one was next. So I don't think it's not like 8 drops and also there's this massive improvement. But the folks on the Blast team, which is the protocol that we use, have been doing incremental improvements with every single release. And this technology, especially with pandemic, is very popular right now. And lots of our, we work with Citrix and we compete against them. We work with Microsoft and we compete against them. We're all kind of keeping each other like, I don't know, it's like a bunch of people just trying to like outdo each other a little bit. Like Citrix comes out with an article that's like, oh, we're 90% more efficient than VMware Blast on Azure. And we're like, what? And we run their tests and like, wow, they are 90% more efficient than us. What do we do? Oh, look, we can fix this. We can do this. We can. And then the next release is like, oh, now we're here. And the next release, they'll be there. And the next release, they'll be there. So I think that's what's kind of happening right now, which is cool. Again, nothing to do with me. Kiran Rao, who a lot of you probably know, he was at Wise back in the day. And remember the Wise, what were those? What did they do? Those enhancements for RDP? I forget what we call it, like the multimedia enhancements. He was doing all that stuff back then, right?
I can't think of the name too, but I remember that. Yeah.
Wise, RDP, EOP, experience. No, that was immersion. It doesn't matter. Anyway, but so here's the thing. The real way you solve Zoom, if I can be honest, and I'm going to editorialize a little bit, and I'm going to tell you this is not 100% how it works within Workspace ONE today, although you can see the early seeds of this, and I think we're getting there. To me, using Zoom through VDI is the wrong use case, right? Because I wrote that book along with Gabe and Jack 8 years ago now called The VDI Delusion. And I was basically saying like, hey, if you think that VDI is taking over the world and VDI is the future, you are delusional. And we spent 300 pages explaining why. That doesn't mean we hate VDI. It's a tool. Use the tool for the right use case. The pandemic shows the right use case for VDI, right? It's like, I already have my packaged, my Windows desktop is my packaged workspace. It has my applications and my data and all that kind of stuff. And now my users have to go home. Great, use a VDI and use that to deliver that packaged workspace to the user wherever they are in the world, regardless of their client device, all that kind of stuff. But stuff like Zoom and any multimedia, Zoom and Teams and all these kinds of things that's just not the right model. Like VDI is not the right model for that. Because the thing is, Zoom runs everywhere. Well, if you're using VDI, you have an endpoint, right? And that endpoint, it could be a thin client, it could be an iPad, it could be my Packard Bell that I found in my basement from the 90s, running Windows 98, it could be who knows what. The thing is, if you have all of your EUC managed by a single platform, so like if Workspace ONE is managing your Horizon environment and your VDI, as well as managing your endpoints, it knows where you're logged in, it knows where your devices are, it knows location. So if I have my iPad right here and I click a Zoom link inside Outlook, inside my Horizon session, why does Zoom open on my Horizon sessions? Shouldn't the backend, like Workspace ONE, know like, hey, you have an iPad right here with Zoom installed. Let's intercept the Zoom open. Do not open Zoom in the remote Horizon session. Rather ping your device, locally, and then cause the Zoom to open on that local device. And now I've got the local native experience that it's gonna be much, much better. And so I think that's the kind of thing that we're looking at is, because the problem with all these performance increases with Teams and Zoom and all this kind of stuff is all of us vendors, like Citrix, I think just yesterday announced, oh, we now support Teams optimization on Mac or something like that, right? The support is always delayed. So, like I remember we at VMware, a year ago or whatever, like announced our Skype for Business multimedia redirection. And it's like, huzzah! But the whole world uses Zoom now. And we're like, hang on. So give us 6 months and we're going to go make Zoom. And by the time, then we release our Zoom optimization pack. But of course it's different. Like, okay, well, Zoom optimization pack on Windows works this way, and on Mac it's coming next month, and on Linux it doesn't work at all. And you know what I mean? It's all like hodgepodgey. And by the way, people are like, oh yeah, we're all using like Slack video now or whatever. Like we're going to use Chime. Like Slack is using Amazon Chime SDK for their video. So it's like, oh, we need now an Amazon Chime multimedia optimization. So it's like, hang on, give us 6 months. So I really feel like the right way to solve this is by looking holistically at all the devices the user has and has access to, and making intelligent decisions at launch time. And these might be variable, right? Making intelligent decisions at launch time, and to minimize the amount of time that we're like remoting Zoom out of our VDI sessions. So that's my worldview. Maybe though someone else says, oh, if we can magically make it so that Zoom works perfectly via these remoting protocols, then we don't have to mess with that kind of stuff. That'd be great. But I don't know if I see that happening, because it's been like 20 years and it hasn't happened yet. So I feel like it's probably not.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, back in the early Citrix days, we had sort of, I forget what it was called, but, it was basically redirection, right? It's like some apps will open here, some apps will open here, file type associations, right? And that makes sense, because some things are fat clients and some things are, more, I don't care how advanced we get within remoting within, our GPUs, all this great stuff that we're able to do. It just runs better. And I think you gave a great example why, and that is, well, time to support too, right? It's not just that, can we do it? Okay, yes, we can, but it's going to take us a few months, maybe 6 months, like you mentioned, and you're suffering that. And then in that 6 months, now there's a new technology that the whole world.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best demos of this is one of my favorite demos of all time. Well, like in IT demos, I guess. And this is from VMworld 2019. So it's the last like in-person VMworld from a year and a half ago. And we are showing, it was a demo on stage. It was a Windows 10 laptop. So no VDI. It was like a local laptop that was managed by Workspace ONE. And the user, they get their Outlook request, and it's like there's a Skype meeting or whatever it was. And they click a link for Skype. And then Skype crashes. It says like the application stops responding, and the whole audience is like, oh, like live demo fail. And then the little Workspace ONE agent pops up, and it's like, hey, we noticed that Skype crashed. We've automatically entered a help desk ticket for this. Would you like to relaunch Skype via Horizon? I forget the wording, but basically it's like, click here to launch the published application version of Skype, because we don't know what's wrong with your Skype and your computer, but hey, I got it published on Horizon. Click here to automatically launch it. And then the user, boom, 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 they're in their application and they're using Skype and they're doing that kind of stuff. So when you start to really tie your physical devices and your virtual devices together in that sort of intelligent way, that's when you can really enable these really cool use cases.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The other question is, why did you buy a Packard Bell? You didn't really buy one of those things, did you? You have more.
I'm joking, because no, I don't really have that. So okay, so I started
like the worst of the bunch.
That's
right?
That's why it's funny.
That's why it's funny.
Remember those mice? This is so.
I don't remember that. I mean, I remember them, but I tried to.
This is the mid 90s. This is a very popular brand in mid 90s. They were sold like in Walmart and like CompUSA and that kind of stuff.
Everyone in there.
So kids, CompUSA was a
CompUSA.
But it was but we had some version, like Packard Bell is probably too old, but I've talked to so many, like since pandemic, I'm actually talking to more customers now than I did before, because a customer meeting that's an hour only takes 1 hour of my time. I don't have to like fly there, drive there, hotel, all that kind of stuff. So I can meet 3 or 4 customers in a day instead of like 1 or 2 in a day. And I cannot tell you how many customers had this exact scenario where, back in March, it's like, okay, we have 2 days to get everyone out of the office. Yeah. We can ramp up our VDI, but if you don't have a laptop, it's like, do you have any computer in your house at all? Like anything in your basement, in your attic, pull it out. Can you get a modern browser on it? Yes, then you can get everything you need. And we literally saw people pulling out these like old Windows XP machines to get online, and they made it work.
Yeah, we did Citrix already had their contest. You remember these things where they, the vendors make their video, right? And we did our video with one of our customers, and it was quite funny. They were basically, hey, it's day zero, with pandemic, we're all working from home. What do we do? And the guy pulls up a laptop and he's like, oh, wow, look, it's Y2K compliant. There was literally a Y2K compliant sticker on it, right? And they converted all these things to IGEL OS, right? And so if I could be so bold to throw that out there. There's a couple other...
Perfect. IGEL OS is great. Good plug for that, because that's the kind of thing that, when you find that Packard Bell in the basement running Windows 98, assuming it has a USB port, then you can.
Well, you don't have you don't just need USB. You can actually install it on the hard drive if it still works.
Super.
I mean, a Packard Bell probably not going to need to be 64-bit, right? So, but you know what I mean. Anything. I mean, that Y2K device supported it. How, I don't know, but it did. It actually did. Someone asked, what if you're using a zero client? And I'll answer this one. Don't use zero clients. The problem with the zero client is real simple, is that it's really, the definition of zero client was a marketing term, which was basically, it locks you into one protocol, into one company, right? And so if that company changes, if the protocol enhances all that, you probably left behind. This is what, again, great about IGEL, because it doesn't matter what the hardware is. The operating system is what we're selling you. You can just convert it, and if there's something new, there's enhancement, we support that, right? So zero clients were really great. It was definitely a neat marketing thing, but it sort of left people sort of locked in maybe old technology after a period of time. Do you have any views on that, Brian?
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, first of all, they're like, well, it's a zero client because there's no software. But
that was complete crap.
But you have to update the firmware from time to time.
I'm like, is what they said.
So what? Yeah, it's got firmware. Like, what come on.
Yes.
And honestly, VMware is a perfect example, because VMware Horizon today, our protocol is Blast. It's called Blast. We also still support PC over IP. Back when VMware entered the VDI space forever ago, they licensed a PC over IP protocol from Teradici that had the zero clients and had a software client and everything.
Sure. And
that was fine for a few years. Over time, VMware realized that having a third party own the protocol was not good, because then from Teradici's eyes, we were just another customer. So we wanted features that our customers wanted. They were like, get in line, we got a lot of customers to balance. And we were like, we've got to get our own protocol. And at that point, I mean, it's, web video, all this stuff exists. It's not, I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but you can make a protocol. There's plenty of all these cloud vendors have it for gaming. People can build that. So VMware built their own protocol. That's Blast. However, we don't want to screw all the existing customers who bought zero clients with the idea that they're going to be around forever. So we support PC over IP today as well. Interestingly, though, our agreement with Teradici ended years ago. And so the version of PC over IP that's in the Horizon product today is very, very old, only to support those old legacy zero clients that people have already bought. And I don't know how, whatever the longest year.
But are you able to then, or are you? Of course, you're able to. Are you writing, let's say, the media optimization for those older protocols? No, right? This is what's leaving.
Right, exactly. Yeah, PC over IP. I cannot imagine anyone using PC over IP today in a Horizon environment unless they have those legacy zero clients required. Yeah. Even if there's a PC over IP customer going out to a Windows machine, well, they're going to update with the Blast, agent and go from there.
Yeah. So along the same line, there was a customer or attendee who asked this, and I want to ask it because he asked it. And in many ways, you've answered this, but we'll ask it. How does Brian see the future of multimedia AV capabilities on VDI, and as optimization remains a challenge, right? So in many ways you answered this, but anything else?
Yeah, all I'm going to say is for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been talking about this holistic, when you manage all your devices on a single platform like Workspace ONE, that allows us to do the things like the demo where, hey, if I'm connecting to a Teams video call within my VDI session, and I click to connect and it realizes I have an iPad locally, or I'm connecting from my own personal Mac, it's just don't run it remotely, just fire it up on your Mac and just, have it local to the user. I've been saying that for years and years, and that's a really great example of an integrated holistic solution. That said, AWS reInvent is happening now. It's happening this week. And when they start talking about having single digit latency to, the bulk of the users in the US, maybe, and we're getting we're having the ability to do custom hardware and custom silicon that can do H.264 encoding and decoding and packaging up. it may be in 3 or 4 years that it's just like Moore's law sort of solves this for us, right? So all like what I'm talking about, a single platform that's popping up stuff here and there and managing everything. We could also see a route where it's like, yeah, but in the future, when all my users are only a single digit millisecond away from everything, and I've got tons of capacity and processing power to do the encoding and decoding, maybe we don't need to monkey around with all that kind of stuff, and we can just do it all via VDI without using any multimedia redirection. I definitely want multimedia redirection to die. That's, by the way, like VMware does that, Citrix does that, Microsoft does that, everyone does that, right? I want that to die. So I want it to either be fixed because the umpteens amounts of bandwidth and CPU we have, or I want it to be fixed via like this sort of like firing up applications locally where that makes sense. I do not want multimedia redirection. So the future of multimedia redirection is kaput. Fingers crossed.
I like this one. It's a question from the audience too. Is what is Workspace ONE's position on managing IGEL devices? Is this on the roadmap?
It's not on a roadmap that I am aware of, but I'm one person of 30,000 or whatever within VMware, so I can't, and I do not like own the roadmaps within our company, so I can't speak to that. VMware is, we're owned by Dell. And Dell owns Wise, and Wise has thin clients, and they have their own management stuff too. So I know it's come up in conversation here and there about like, oh, would you like to manage your thin client devices via the same platform as you're managing Workspace ONE, or the same platform, via Workspace ONE that you're managing everything else. So I don't know what the plans are. I can tell you that personally, I believe this is a very good idea, because why wouldn't you want to manage all of your IGEL devices? That's the whole point of having like a EUC platform, is you've got one place to go. And if you look at everything, like look at Workspace ONE, all the security reports, right? Like we take the CVE data feeds from MITRE and automatically download those into Workspace ONE Intelligence. And then we're running reports against our data lake in sort of real time, so that if vulnerability is found, it can tell you right now, boom, you have 8,296, Windows 10 devices that are vulnerable for this. And then you can auto quarantine. There's a lot of things you can do with that. And that will work across, all your devices. Well, if you have IGEL thin clients, wouldn't you want to know about them too? Like, it just seems to me like silly not to try to integrate, especially the thin clients that are so closely associated with using Horizon. So I think it's a really, really awesome idea, and I hope it happens. But it is in no way part of my department or hell, maybe they're doing it right now. I have no idea, but I have not heard that
Bill,
yet.
you have something. I think we have a project, or maybe not. Maybe you can add some value here, Bill.
Probably not, Doug, but I'll try. So Brian, you might be familiar with the IoT connector they're building for Workspace ONE, right? Because with IoT, Workspace ONE wants to be able to manage, any device on your network, and a device on your network is now a camera, right? A smart camera running Linux, and you want to manage it and be able to update the firmware, view it, and see what it's doing, and see if it's still online, or reboot it, update the firmware, whatever, right? So we do have something going on internally between our two companies. We've kept it kind of on the QT for now, but I'll kind of give you an update offline about it. And anybody online who wants to have this discussion, it'd be a non-disclosure meeting to talk about what we're doing together. But I'll just kind of paint a scenario, especially given the pandemic and a lot of the BYOD and remote laptops people are shipping out. And like right now, Workspace ONE has a program with a bunch of the hardware vendors like the Dells and Lenovo's, et cetera, where they'll embed Workspace ONE at the factory, let's say on a Lenovo device. So when you come home, you turn it on, it connects to Workspace ONE, it enrolls you and gives you all that cool stuff, right? So let's paint a picture where the device comes home and you turn it on, and it gives you actually a dual boot option. It says, click on this if you want to get to your corporate environment, and over here is your personal environment, right? So you click on the corporate environment, and let's say that starts up the IGEL OS, and then the IGEL OS connects up into our management system and says, hey, Workspace ONE, this device wants to check in, it wants to enroll, it wants to become part of Workspace ONE. Okay, Workspace ONE takes it in, enrolls it, it's now in the system, and then it also says to this user, hey, we also have this Horizon connection waiting for you over here. I'm going to pop you over there, and log in, and then it's going to give you the desktop that you're used to, have in your office with all your apps and all the same views and all that. That's kind of what we're trying to get to at a high level with Workspace ONE, and we made some pretty good progress. So it's getting interesting.
And I'll add, it's something IGEL definitely sees. It's not just Workspace ONE, but all, so many enterprises, so many customers have management infrastructures. Some days we have a great management infrastructure, but if you already have one, it'd be nice if you can manage our devices with what you already have. So it's something we know about and something we want to be able to support moving forward, to give our customers the flexibility. So you'll see more out of us in the future. Okie dokie. So Brian, here's a question that I get a lot when I'm doing podcasts, and I've done a bunch with some guys, older UC folks. And they'll, I'll bring up, hey, what do you think of Citrix? What do you think of Microsoft? What do you think of VMware? I say, VMware hired, some great guys. They got Sean and Brian and Ron. And then it ultimately comes up to, these guys have enough power in a behemoth, like we mentioned earlier, called VMware, to actually change things. So, you got a brain trust over there. Does that matter? Does VMware listen to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's anytime you're talking about a large company, like you can't use VMware in the singular way, right? Like, does sure. VMware listen to us? Like, what does that even mean, right? Yeah. So the good news is that I think people within VMware recognize that we have a lot of people like me who've been doing EUC for a long, long time. And I think we're in the right positions we can make sure that our voices are heard. My perspective is only like my world. So, I don't necessarily, like, all my ideas or positions don't necessarily have to be accepted. I want them to be heard. And, if you look at, so like, I work for Sean, and he's a VP, the CTO, and then we've got, our VPs, even with the end user computing, there's a head of marketing, head of engineering, head of product management, head of CTO, operations, all that kind of stuff. And then it rolls up to the GM for EUC. And the GM, that's Shankar Iyer. He's got a million things going on. He's talking to our COO, and he's doing all this kind of stuff. So as long as Shankar hears, if I'm like, hey, here's what we're thinking, here's the idea. We have think tanks, we have leadership meetings, we have all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of things we can talk to product management and kind of get them on board. We have the opportunity to make sure that, like, our perspectives are being heard by the people who make the decisions. And then I just have to trust them that they are in their position for a reason, and they make the decisions that are in the best interest of the company. And sometimes, like, my idea might be like, oh, hey, we should rewrite all of Horizon to be serverless and not have VMs anymore. And they're like, okay, that'll take 4 years. And what are we going to do in the meantime? So, like, thank you. This is them telling me this, right? Yeah. And it's not going to go away. It's just like, dude, we get it. But, like, we're not dropping everything we have to rewrite Horizon to be serverless in the next 90, right? Like, it's sure. Yes, this is our direction. This is VMware's direction. We're going that. So I feel like I've got a seat at the table, and that's all I can really ask for.
That's great. That's great. That's great. I mean, VMware's done such a great job executing. If you really think about it, you have a company that was, a startup when Citrix was mature. Right, and it just leapfrogged Citrix, and then like you said, it's how many employees, how big is this thing? They're buying billion-dollar companies in a week, multiples, and it comes down to proper execution. There's been other companies doing what they're doing. I'm quite impressed with what the greater VMware has accomplished, right, and in all the business units. They've hired good people, a lot of Citrites too, and it's really a case study in success. It's a pretty impressive company, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're growing, and I think a big thing I was going to say real quick is,
please. To
me, the most exciting area also is some of the cross VMware collaborations. So right now, I think we're more siloed than would be ideal, and so there's so much power and so many really awesome products we have in our networking groups, in our security groups, in all these different kinds of things. You may have seen at VMworld we announced this thing called our VMware SASE service, which that's the Secure Access Service Edge. It's basically like, imagine like the old Citrix Secure Gateways or UAGs as a service. So VMware runs them in hundreds of locations all over the world. And then it's we'll do all of your, authentication, DMZ, all that kind of stuff, like basically as a service to get those endpoints, those edge access points as close to the users as possible. But that's a collaboration between EUC and Carbon Black and the networking. And we just announced this 2 months ago, and we're rolling it out now. I think you're going to see more of that kind of stuff. Like that's where the power really becomes interesting, is when we start tying together all the different technology we have across the different business units, and then rolling that into real solutions.
Perfect. Here's a question. I was going to save this for a little bit later, but I'm going to ask you now because you're talking about the different business units within VMware. What other areas of VMware, apart from VDI, should I focus on to advance my career?
I guess you have to think about that if you're in the context of end user computing or just in general. To me, my opinion on this, like the area I think that's very important, will be more and more important, and that people aren't really getting into right now, is like the identity management, identity security, like access management, access provisioning, all that kind of stuff. So this is just, there's so much to this, right? It's like, where are the users logging into? How are they, are you going to like a third party, like a Ping or an Okta, Azure Active Directory, your VMware directories, how like all these multi-factor authentications work? Like that whole industry, the whole like identity and access management or identity access protection, there's a bunch of different ways to talk about that. That to me seems like will be more and more and more and more critical as time goes on. And there's just like a lot of moving parts, and it's very confusing. And John Tolles, who's one of our V experts, did his great blog post this week talking about the Workspace ONE Access product, like walking through setups and how to do it. There's just a lot of stuff to figure out. And by the way, this is not just a VMware thing. Like Citrix has their stuff, Microsoft has their stuff. Everyone's kind of going down this path. So I think the identity and access management is the main area. Everyone talks about AI and machine learning. I feel like AI and machine learning is cool from a hobby standpoint. Like, yes, all the products that we use are being empowered by AI and machine learning to be smarter, blah, 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 whatever. But the thing is, for us as IT pros, especially as like IT operations people, we're not going to like learn AI and become like data scientists and like write. Google has like 1 billion AI employees, right? Like I'm making that up, obviously, but they probably have tens of thousands of people doing AI. Amazon's got tens of, like, you're not going to be like, if you're sort of like your MCSE type, like VMware admin kind of person, you're not going to become like an AI researcher. Unless if you want to, that's cool. But I'm saying like it's a skill to add to your tool bag to be a good IT admin. I feel like the AI and ML is going to be huge, but that's like, I don't think that's as immediate return on you. The identity and access management, like that's a thing that I think is the weakest thing that people have. And that'd be great. And the other stuff I talk about too, man, good old fashioned Windows. If you're a VDI admin, forget reading about Citrix and VMware, read about Windows. The system internal, the Windows internals guides, and all like the deep stuff on how Windows works, how the Windows security works, how the application management works, recovery. Because I think a lot of VDI admins still don't really understand how Windows works. Remember that Windows resource kit? It used to be like a 1,700-page book that was like that thick.
Still have it. Yeah, it's in Florida.
Yeah.
But the Windows, I was just talking to my wife about Windows 95 guide. It was big blue box, a big blue book.
And they did it for Windows 7. It was the last one. Windows 10, it's online now. And it's all free. Just like Google for like Windows 10 resource kit. By the way, can I take a little side note to say like—
you can do anything you want.
Speaking of books, so I have the Desktop as a Service book that Gabe and I wrote in 2014. And I have the Enterprise Mobility Management book that Jack wrote in 2014. Part of my pandemic projects is like cleaning out my house. I've been doing like a 9-month-long spring cleaning now, right? So I have multiple copies of the old books. I opened this book up and look what's on the inside. I don't know if you can see that. It's signed. It says, "To Doug, VDI's come a long way. Now it's Daz." Signed by Gabe. I wrote, "Hey, Doug, great to catch up recently. Can't believe we do this for over 10 years. Wow, that shows how long that
I appreciate you sending that to me.
In this book, it says, "To Doug Brown, EMM Rocks," and it's signed by Jack. So I have 2 autographed books here, apparently for you. They've been sitting on my bookshelf for about 6 years. So after this is over, email me your mailing address. I will put my business card in there too, which I will sign because I know you collect those. But I want to say that sorry, it's a belated gift, but we have these autographed books for you, which I'll drop in the mail once we're done.
That's funny. That's funny. I do have I'm a book collector. I have although in Berlin I can't do it because I don't have the space. But
or I can hang on to these for when you come back to the U.S., whichever. Yeah.
No. I want them in Berlin because eventually I got to get all these books over. I got 3,000 books. I got to figure out how to get here.
So Berlin is like it for you. Like you're Berlin for life.
I'm going to die in Berlin unless I die in a hotel room somewhere, and hopefully I don't do that. Right? I mean, we used to spend most of our lives in hotel rooms. But let's continue. You brought this up earlier, and VDI and DAS and all this, and well, actually, before we get to that, you mentioned Microsoft. You just mentioned Windows, and of course, with COVID came out this year. End of last year, Microsoft announced WVD. I thought it would take a little bit of time, and then COVID hit, which was like immediately, or like the best, thing for WVD in the world. And so, what is your view on WVD? What is VMware's view on WVD? Does VMware have this on the roadmap? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean. So Microsoft, I don't know. It's like such a generic question. I mean, our view on WVD, like it's fine. We broker connections to you can use Horizon Cloud on Azure to broker connections to WVD using the Blast protocol and managing everything, via the Horizon stack. And you can have hybrid between on-prem and cloud and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people. I think we have to separate also out WVD, like Microsoft kind of hosted desktop offering. We have to separate from the multi-user Windows 10 option, which is one of the WVD VM types that you can do if you're running it on Azure. And my position is like, that's fine. It's just another OS type. It's another way to slice and dice the Windows OS and figure out, platforms that work for users and all that kind of stuff. And, whether a user wants to, you can run Horizon Cloud on Azure and fully manage all your own VMs. You can actually run full Horizon 8 on-prem version in Azure and manage your VMs. Or you can have WVD access where Microsoft is managing everything, but it's still connecting into your Horizon environment. So it's using Blast protocol and our management consoles and stuff. So there's like multiple levels of like how much do you, the customer, want to deal with, and how much do you want to let some other vendor deal with. And it's kind of like Mark Templeton talking about the dial knob back in the day, right? So to me, WVD, I'm going to say, this doesn't sound really dumb. WVD is like not a big deal, but I mean that in a good way, right? Like it should be. It was super crazy before that. Like it was sort of like, I don't know, these partners are doing stuff, and Microsoft were like, well, does Microsoft even like VDI? Do they not like it? It's cool that Microsoft has leaned in. I love that they publish their roadmaps, and they publish like, here's what we're doing, here's the next quarter, here's estimated release dates. WVD next week, I think, is their 1-year anniversary of its release. And they've been adding features. And it's awesome because it's like a rising tide raises all boats. And so all the features they add to WVD, like kind of are magically available to all of our VMware customers who are powering their Horizon desktops via WVD. So to me, it's very exciting. There's a conversation we should have at some point about like the future of the workspace and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, WVD it's just VDI. Now, when I say VDI, it's how we defined it in our book. I'm using VDI like generically to mean it's Windows desktops that are being remoted. Maybe it's a client OS, maybe it's a server OS, maybe it's persistent, maybe it's non-persistent, maybe it's multi-users per VM, maybe it's one, session-based versus VM-based isolation, whatever. All those to me count as like, when I say VDI, I'm saying like generically all those kinds of things. So WVDI is a VDI offering, that's great. But there's a lot of use cases where remoting an entire Windows desktop or remoting a Windows application does not make sense. And that's where, even from Microsoft's standpoint, that's where they're going down the path with, we can manage it locally with Intune. That's what we're using with Workspace ONE. So I love that WVD is out there. I love, there's all the talk about Microsoft providing a cloud desktop next year. This and all the like ZDNet and all this kind of stuff is talking about like an actual like DAS, like as a service, pay $50 per month per user, whatever, which to me is, again, rising tide raises all boats. Like the more remoting in the world, it's better for people like us who have sort of dedicated our careers to that. So I'm very psyched about what they're doing.
Very cool.
And our old friends are running this stuff. Like Dennis Grunderev is over there. Like he's just another old school dude. And he's on a product manager group at Microsoft over there. I'm in Seattle. I'm pointing to Redmond. It's that way.
We had Dennis on the Meetup a couple months ago. So Dennis is a great guy. So he's running RDP over there. Absolutely. So you keep mentioning VDI, and I think sometimes to you, VDI is almost like everything, like published desktop, or not, you know what I mean? So when does what do you feel about DAS, desktop as a service versus, let's say, VDI, or maybe, I guess a better way to say it is on-prem versus cloud? Where do you think that plays today? And I guess your answer is going to be, it all depends. It's sort of a hybrid world, right?
Yeah, and I think we're getting to a point where
all night.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to a point where it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't care, and I mean that in a great way. Whatever. It's someone. Hey, you want to come over? You're gonna walk? You're gonna ride your bike? You can take the bus? You're gonna drive? I don't care. Just be here at 6. Whatever. Do what you want. So that's kind of where I see things going. The cloud. Originally, the cloud was always in the cloud. It was remote, right? It was someone else's data center. And that was the big deal. I think everyone is so focused on I don't want to let someone else have my security, or I will never trust my data in the cloud. That's kind of been we all realize that cloud providers are better at security than we are, generally speaking. But that was the big story of the cloud 10 years ago, right? I feel like the story of the cloud now is not about that. The cloud is sure, it's a CapEx model where they are buying the servers and running them remotely instead of you. And that changes, operationalizes your IT and makes it, all that sort of stuff. But the real story about the cloud is the operationalization. When you have virtualization and you can slice and dice all these machines into different little pieces, and then look at where we're going, the whole industry, with that's getting better and better and better. Now we've got ASICs and SmartNICs and all these kinds of things. Now we're starting to realize hey, there's times where it makes sense to run our infrastructure on someone else's iron, and there's times where it makes sense to run on our iron. And I think everyone's internal data centers are becoming more like local cloud nodes. I mean, who's got a data center now that doesn't have any virtualization in it, right? And virtualizing your data center was the 10 years ago project. Now the project is okay, now everything's virtualized. How to operationalize that? How to manage, make things move around, redundancy, failover, all this kind of stuff. So I honestly look at it as people's data centers, the operational technology that runs your on-prem and the operational technology that the cloud providers run, it's all the same stuff. And so it doesn't really matter. It's hey, for someone like Amazon, we're going to do everything we can do and make it as cheap as possible for you and operate it as much as we can. And you can jump in and you can use it really easily. But it's probably still going to be, if you actually need that much capacity, 24/7, 365, you probably don't want to pay Amazon for that. Dropbox is a great example, where they said, remember Dropbox was all, when they first created, all on AWS. And then after a while, they're wow, we can build this ourselves for way cheaper. And they brought it back off of AWS, which is great. It's the same thing that people were talking about earlier with, sorry, it was not with you, conversation with someone else, but it was Mac OS, right? So AWS announced they're gonna have Mac virtualization. You can have Mac minis virtualized. And someone's oh my gosh, it's $20 a day or whatever. After 77 days, you could buy your own Mac mini. And I say, if you need a Mac mini for 77 days straight, you should buy your own Mac mini. I think AWS will tell you that too. The cloud is there not to be cheaper than on-prem. The cloud is there to be, hey, if I need a Mac mini for 2 days, twice a month, why buy it? Just have it there running, and it's always running, and you don't have to worry about hardware and warranty and support and updating and all that kind of stuff. So I feel to me, the cloud is moving away from a thing. It's moving away from a location, and it's becoming a way of operating our data center environments. And at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters whose cloud it runs on, whether it is on-prem, whether it's your stuff. This is why, by the way, the fact that people like me are saying it doesn't matter is why other cloud vendors are getting into all these shenanigans about lock-in and stuff like that. The reason that Microsoft WVD, the reason that multi-user Windows 10 is Azure only is because Microsoft knows there's no differentiation between Azure and AWS and any other cloud. So why would you use Azure? It's well, let's release a feature that's only on Azure. It's planned, it's forced lock-in, right? But they do that. It's the same reason why you can't run Office on your Horizon servers on AWS anymore, right? Because Microsoft changed the licensing for that. And so they have to do these kinds of like things to lock people in because the cloud truly democratizes and decentralizes everything. And again, I don't talk about the cloud to cloud platforms. I mean, cloud and also on-prem. So that to me is the big like takeaway from this, is that it's an operational model that is just making it much easier for us to operate as IT admins, which is great. But now we have to like worry about all the shenanigans and like the forced friction points that these vendors, cloud providers are adding to force us onto their own clouds. So that's, we're changing out one headache for another. But as far as an operational model, that to me is the key.
Makes sense. I agree. Okay. We have a bunch of questions. So let me go through these. First of all, no. Can the person that raises the best question win one of those books? And does that count as a good question? No, those are my books, and I've been waiting for how many years for them? I want those books. So
I'll send a book to whoever else. If I have to go to the post office anyway, going out anymore is like such a
treat.
I gotta mask up. I gotta so if I'm going out, I'm going out, right? Like I'll send another book. So if there's an awesome question.
I like when I have a reason to go outside, to be honest with you, because I never go anywhere. No, COVID hasn't been bad for me. I'm a nerd. I'm totally happy to sit at home in my dark office and work away. It makes me happy, but I do miss it. Let's keep going. So here's a good question. Something I was pretty much going to leave to the end, but let's plug through these one at a time as we can. So thoughts on where EUC will be in 5 years, new goals, automation, security. You probably covered some of this already. But 2021, the year of VDI. I really think this is. Someone said it today. Carl, that works for IGEL, Mr. IT Baller himself, said it. He goes, I think that 2020 has really been sort of the year of VDI. VDI meaning, hey, it's we've clarified or proved that this idea of what you and I would call remoting is a good idea. And it's required. And if you had it, COVID wasn't a problem for you. If you didn't, you ended up with it, right? So, So where do you think it's going to be in, where are we going? What's 5 years, 10 years look like?
So, I did this presentation at Bri Forum back in 2010, so 10 years ago, where I talked about the future of the desktop. And I was talking about, one of the problems I have with VDI is it's a full Windows desktop, right? And so if I have a local client device that has its own desktop, like I'm using my Mac laptop, I'm using my iPad, when I connect to my VDI desktop, it just like completely disrespects everything that I have locally and like spray paints over at Windows, right? And now, oh, congratulations, you turned your iPad into Windows. And I'm like, this is not what I wanted to do. Now, that said, the reason organizations do that is because if you think about, Workspace is everything. Look at Bill's like Workspace, cool place. So you Google renamed G Suite to Workspace, right? Doesn't Citrix have the Workspace app? We have Workspace One, IGEL Workspace. Well, in a digital context, what is your workspace? Like it's my applications, it's my files, it's my identity, it's my preferences, my settings, my device. It's all that kind of stuff. It's everything I need to do my job. And for 20 years, that was a Microsoft Windows desktop. And so the reason VDI and this whole bucket of technologies exists is because if someone was working remotely, before Citrix, before VDI, if you work remotely, you have to have your own device and like install everything, kind of get it all trying to set up and try to synchronize and have a VPN and Dropbox and all this kind of stuff. And it's just brittle and broken and everyone's different. How do you support a billion different versions of software and combinations? And it's like, it's a nightmare. And so the idea that VDI can be like, look, we just make this Windows environment running here and you then can deliver it to you anywhere, anytime. That's awesome. And obviously 2020 is like, if any year was going to be called the year of the VDI, I think it's fair enough to call it 2020. So that's great. And I'm not like begrudging VDI technology sort of at all. But again, the applications we use are starting to shift, right? Like more and more of what we do, like what applications are important to you? Think about if you rebuild your laptop today, like what do you have to have installed? Like for me,
Office.
Honestly,
Office in a browser.
And Zoom. Honestly, I'm a Mac guy. Yeah, Zoom. There you go. Zoom,
1Password.
Office. Yeah, 1Password. I use Safari. I even used to use Firefox, and I'm like, Safari is built in. Who cares? Like, whatever. So yeah, exactly. Now, think of that 10 years ago. It would have been like, oh my God, I need boom, boom, all these things, right? So my point is that there's a lot of stuff that we can do on our local devices that we do in our way. And, the version of Office I use on a Mac is the Mac version of Office. I don't want to remote the Windows version because it's like Windowsy, but I'm on a Mac, right? You want to use the local versions made for that. When I'm on my iPad, I want to use the local, like the iOS version of Office on my iPad, not the remote Windows one. And so I think what we're starting to see is like the nature of our applications are starting to change. Obviously the pandemic, you look at all the surveys. We know for sure that work is not going to return back to exactly as it has been before. People are roughly into 3 buckets. And it's about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to each bucket. There's 1/3 of us who are working from home and being like, you know what? Never going to an office again. This is my life for the next 20 years. Now that's people like me who are single and live in a house and have like no dog, no kids. I have a dedicated studio in my basement, which is different from my workspace, which is different from my playing space, which is different from all these different spaces. That's different than someone who's in a 1-bedroom apartment with a kid, and the two parents would both go out to the office every day. Those people might be to the point where they can't wait to go back. So there's another 1/3 of people who are like, I cannot wait to go back to the office. I'm going back full time. Cannot open soon enough. My sister's like that, actually. She just cannot wait for the office to open back up again and just hates working at home. Then you got about 1/3 also who are kind of in the hybrid. Like I would love to go in the office a couple days a week and just kind of like have human contact and hang with coworkers and go out drinking afterwards and that kind of stuff. We're talking like after pandemic, but I want to work a few days a week at my home too. So the point is, home workers are going to be much more important than they were in the past. I feel like in the old days, it was like The Office, like that TV show, The Office. Remember Todd Packer, who was like he was like the remote sales rep, and he was in like 5 episodes, right? Because it's like the remote people are always like second-class citizens, like out there. By the way, quick program note: I'm trying to move beyond using the word remote workers because I feel like that's almost like pejorative. Like if you're a remote worker, that suggests you're sort of like far away and disconnected and like not like a first-class worker. So I like the term of more like, anywhere office, everywhere office, whatever you want to call it, right? Because like because we really need to get to the point where our workers who are remote, who never come into a physical office, need to have access to, the mental stream of what's happening in the work, the water cooler conversations, the camaraderie, like all that kind of stuff. So to me, what end user computing technology needs to solve is we need to solve for this world where some of our users are in an office, some of our users are not in an office, and everyone needs to sort of collaborate together. Now, what's interesting about this is there's that book from Jacob Morgan. Probably you all read this. It's from 2017, the Employee Experience Advantage. And everyone at Citrix read this. Everyone at VMware read this. It's basically this guy that says, hey, if you want to provide a good employee experience, sure, technology is part of that, but that's only about 1/3 of it. Another 1/3 is the physical environment. Now that means different things during the pandemic, but like, is my building, do I have natural lights? Do I have natural windows? Do I have like, a big desk? Do I have a standing desk? Just that kind of stuff. And then 1/3 is cultural. What's the company's culture like? So providing a good employee experience is about technology, the physical environment, and culture. Okay, now we all go home. So the technology is like solvable, like whether it's VPNs or VDI or Workspace ONE or whatever, like we've all got that kind of figured out. But how do you extend culture to your users when they're at home? Like, think about this. What if I quit my job tomorrow and worked at Citrix? That would be crazy. Like a major, like senior person going from like one competitor to another competitor is like, before pandemic, for me to go to Citrix, it's like, do they even have an office in Seattle? What does it look like? What is their plans? It's a big, big deal to switch companies. But now what did I do today? I woke up, I did 10 minutes of Peloton stretching. I came down to my Keurig, I made coffee, I came down to my basement, and I fired up Zoom. That's what I do every single day now. So if I quit my job at VMware and go work at Microsoft or go work at Citrix, how does my job change? Not at all. I put a different background on my TV behind me, but beyond that, it does not change my job at all. So the ability for employees to change jobs right now in this remote world, the friction has been completely removed, which means our employers need to figure out how do they keep employees engaged when they're all working from home. Obviously, we have to provide the technology so the users can work in the ways they want. We need to provide them with, if you want to use a Mac, if you want to use an iPad, you want to use whatever. But how do you extend culture? And what is culture? Because people say, what is Google's culture? It's like, well, they got free massages and childcare and chefs on site. But that's not culture. Those are amenities, right? Like, what's the actual culture in the organization? You asked the question, Doug, earlier, do I feel like my voice is heard at VMware? That's culture, right? Do I have the ability to pull Shankar, our GM, and be like, hey, here's an idea I want to talk like that? These are the culture things. And of course, those can exist whether you're pandemic or not pandemic. But the point is, organizations really have to fundamentally shift and think about, if you've got employees working everywhere in the world, it's not just delivering technology, it's delivering the working environment and the cultural environment for the organization to keep those employees working there. So all that said, end user computing, ironically, is like the hub of all these different pieces that we're sort of trying to pull together. One of the things that's interesting about me this year is I spent so much more time talking to HR people than I have IT people, because all of these issues, now we're talking about remote onboarding, remote offboarding. How many companies remote onboarded in the past? That was not a thing. Now HR is leading that, but IT needs to go hand in hand with them. We're seeing IT having to get involved with facilities. So, no VMware offices in the US are open now, but when they do, we know it's going to be a very different world, right? Because there's capacity limits for buildings. In fact, VMware disabled everyone's employee badge, and you cannot get your badge re-enabled until you go through a training class about COVID safe. Because now there's multiple doors in buildings, like this is entrance only, this is exit. There's tape on the floors, like this hallway is one way. All of these different kinds of things. The conference room capacity limits. Right? It used to be like, oh, we're in this meeting, this conference room holds 8, 10 people showed up, so people are standing in the back. You don't get to do that anymore. If that room is set, that room that held 8 people probably now holds 3, and it has to be 3 only. You cannot, person 4 cannot come in there. So your conference room booking systems have to, there's just so much stuff that has to change that is facilities issues and HR issues, but IT is very much involved with this sort of thing. And so I think that what we're seeing now is that, the workspace environment that we are living in now, to the point earlier, it's not the Microsoft Windows desktop necessarily. It's Slack, right? It's Teams. You look at what Microsoft is doing with Teams, and Teams is now, it's Office integration, it's your chat integration, it's hooking with desktops, with apps, with all that sort of stuff. I sort of feel like the Windows desktop is sort of being replaced by your Teams, Slack, Zoom, whatever that sort of is. And this is something that had been happening slowly. Remember, I told you, I opened this little conversation with saying that I talked about this at Bri Forum in 2010, 10 years ago as a concept, but nothing really happened until this year. And so I think this is what we're going to see is the acceleration off of a packaged Windows desktop as the workspace, and moving towards this dynamically created, interactive environment. That is what is going to hardcore accelerate in the next 5 years. And one thing I'll say right now, what this future is, it is not this. It is not Zoom. It is not Teams, because Zoom and Teams and all those people, I love you, but you're trying to recreate the old-fashioned office experience. Zoom is creating the old-fashioned traditional meeting experience, the old-fashioned in-person presentation experience, and that is not the right experience for this new use case. The example I used to illustrate this is television. When TV was invented in the 30s, they obviously had to invent the TV set, and they had to invent the TV cameras and the whole transmission system and all that kind of stuff. So they invent all this stuff. They get some TV sets out in people's households, and they're like, okay, turn on the TV. And they're like, oh, we don't have any content to put on the TV. And they're like, oh, what should we do? They're like, well, we have radio shows. Just point the camera at the people who are doing the radio show. And it's all the guys with the thing of metal making thunder and open doors and clip clop. And it's fine, but that it's not a sitcom, right? It took another 5 years for the sitcom to be developed and the concept of, that sort of thing. And so I think we're going to see this right now. Look at the collaboration platform. You know them, MMHMM. Look at the, actually, I think is a presentation platform. Look at AHA, which is a collaboration platform, as like little sparks to what like future Zoom, future Teams are going to look like. Because you can't, anyone, some companies, you read these horror stories in like magazines where the manager's like, oh, we have to all have camaraderie. So I'm forcing everyone, you have to work all day long with your Zoom camera on. I would leave that job as fast as I could. I think the people who don't leave those jobs are the ones who are like, who are not able to at this time. That is not the solution. Forcing everyone to be logged into Zoom all day long with the camera on is the equivalent of pointing the TV camera at the radio actors. Pat on the back, nice try, keep trying. And I think what we're going to see in 5 years, and like I said, I mentioned AHA and names are getting dumber, I guess. I don't know. That's only domains are available. Who knows? But these are two examples of just like the way the collaboration works, the collaborative presentations. It's, kind of like, remember when Prezi came out and it's kind of like upended the presentation world of moving out of like static slides and PowerPoints. I feel like stuff is going to happen with all of our collaboration and all that sort of thing. So I think EUC in 5 years really is allowing all of us all around the world to have the same first-class employee experience and to be able to get everything we need to do and have a high like level of satisfaction and a low level of creepy feelings to actually replace what the office experience was. But there's going to be a lot of iterations here. There's going to be a lot of experimentation. By the way, this is not for VMware to fix. VMware, I think, is going to be like more like we are today, like the plumbing behind the things, and whatever the platforms are, we'll make sure it's like secured and single sign-on and reported and updated, managed, and all that kind of stuff. But that to me is where the real interesting future is going to be. In the next 5 years are going to be in the EUC land. The next 5 years are going to be like that kind of stuff. I think is where the real innovation takes place.
Cool. Have you ever worked in an office? Have you ever had an office, a desk in an office?
I did at Tech Target actually. So, because I was always a consultant back in the day. So I had a desk.
Yeah, me too. I've never had a desk in an office.
Yeah, I never had a desk assigned.
I take that back. At Citrix, we had an EBC in California, and I had a cubicle there. When I first started, I went there every morning. I was at the office at 8 o'clock, and I left at 5 p.m. And then my boss called me up, and they said, "Are you going to the office every day?" And I said, "Well, of course I am." He goes, "Well, how long what's your commute like?" Well, it's about 2 hours each way. He said, "Do you think that's a good use of your time?" I was like, "Absolutely not." He's like, "Don't go." Actually, I think he also said, "Is anybody there?" And I was like, "Not a soul."
Hey, Ben, but you had like 50. You had like 15, giant TVs to play with. So,
well, I had free Coke. That's what I had. Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper. I used to go in there whenever I went up to 101. It used to be right on 680 101, the San Mateo Bridge. Whenever I go up there, go by it, I'd always stop so I can get free Coke, fill up my backpack, and then head on home.
Yeah, I had an office at Tech Target. So Tech Target brought Brian Madden company in 2008. And I had just moved to San Francisco, and Tech Target actually had an office in San Francisco. And I was new to the city. We had just been acquired by this company, and I had been working from home for a long time, like 20 years or whatever at that time. But I thought, let's go in the office and just see what that's like, just to meet my coworkers and like meet people in San Francisco and that kind of stuff. And it was a pretty good experience, but I was also traveling a lot. I was working from home. So I was probably in the office a couple of days a week. Honestly, it's the same thing I feel here. Especially I live in Seattle now. I just moved to Seattle about a year ago. I moved here like just before the pandemic began. So I moved here, and then they locked everything down, and now I just like don't really know anybody. So when offices open up again, I am the one who wants to work in an office like a couple days a week. Yeah,
I would love to. It's one of the reasons I joined IGEL. It's like like you said earlier. I did the ABCC, you did Brian Madden. And, it just gets lonely. And I mean, you had Gabe and what have you, but, it's, you do the same thing over and over. And I joined IGEL for many reasons. One of them is I wanted to work with people again. Now, unfortunately, I'm in Berlin. Our headquarters are in Bremen, and our dev guys are down in Augsburg. So I still don't have anyone around me. But
yeah, it's kind of funny. Anyway, that's another interesting thing, by the way, just real quick on the future of EUC.
Sure.
Is
that's my next question, actually, I think, is go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, if, no matter how much is going at work, like you have to think about like what's important in your life and what is fulfilling to you and what gives you satisfaction and like what comes from work, what comes from personal, whatever. And the pandemic is very interesting, and working from home is very interesting because if I get, like I said, if I get frustrated at VMware and I quit and then join our competitor, well, I'm still sitting down here in my house all day long. So like, how does that change my life really? All it means is like I gotta restart my vesting schedule for my stock, and I gotta restart my seniority schedule and rebuild all those relationships. And like, you know, if you're working at Microsoft in Redmond over there on the other side of Lake Washington every day, and then you change and like go to work at Amazon and you're working at Amazon in downtown Seattle, like that's a very big difference. And there's like a lot of like, oh, I can rebuild my life around Amazon or around Microsoft or whatever. But when it's all in your basement, like who cares? Like if the company's not, if something happens you don't love and it's whatever, it's like, but I'm just sitting in front of my laptop and my screen, like kind of who cares what I do? Because at 5 o'clock, whatever you close it, and it doesn't matter. So it's very interesting about how, you know, that lack of office, again, it really lowers the level of friction for employees to go between companies. But at the same time, it makes the value that they perceive of working at company A versus company B kind of disappear. Because again, like how does a company extend culture to users who are remote?
It's a good question. Culture is something that's always sort of you know, what is a company culture and things like that. And I've given a lot of thought. And you know, I run the IGEL community, and the IGEL community has sort of a culture too, because it's an entity. It's a sort of a self-breathing, self-growing entity. And I realized, wow, this sort of has a culture, and sort of my culture in many ways, and which is fascinating. But I want to talk about the edge. You know, I was actually watching VMworld virtual, which really, I hate these virtual events. I mean, I like, you know, we do once a month, but the big ones are the ones I miss seeing these guys. You know, I miss running into you and giving you crap. You know, I miss running into you know, Sean. You know, I miss all this so much. And but anyway, I was watching this VMware thing, and they started talking about the next big battle is on the edge. And you know, everything's changing. You know, we're going remote. You know, we're going centralized. You know, blah blah. The edge is the next big battle. And of course, I work for IGEL, which is an edge company in many ways. What do you think about the edge? Not just IGEL, of course, but you know, you mentioned, you know, learn Windows. Is that because we're going to have it in the back end, or what do you think? You know, what's the future of the edge?
It's interesting. I mean, you know, EUC in our world, historically, it's been about Microsoft Windows desktops with Windows applications. That is your workspace, right? That Microsoft Windows desktop. And that is a monolithic thing that runs on a computer or on a virtual computer, like as a full VM, right? And so obviously Edge is trendy and can mean a lot of different things. You know, moving your Windows VM as close to your users as possible is going to provide the best experience. But you also have to make sure that your applications you're running have, you know, the high-speed connections they need to whatever their backends are. It's like we talked about, and Doug, you and I have joked about this 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we were joking that 10 years before that. So now 20 years ago, we were joking like, you know, put your Metaframe servers by your applications. Put your Metaframe servers by the data. That doesn't change now, even though it's 20 years later. Put your Horizon servers, put your VDI instances near the backend pieces that your users need to operate. So the edge to me is more transformative for these like new style applications that are being rewritten as like serverless or like, you know, Kubernetes and all of these types of things, where it's these little like threadlets, whatever, that are kind of running all over the place. And then you're taking an application and breaking it up into a million little pieces and running it wherever it makes sense. Do you need access to this kind of power, this kind of throughput, or the user, or whatever? But the Windows desktop applications we use, like that doesn't apply, right? Like you can't take Microsoft Word doesn't really like get broken up in a lot of different components and say like, oh, run the UI over here and the backend over there and the backend over here. We're seeing Microsoft trying to go down that path, and it's like clunky and awful. Like what Microsoft is trying to do with like all the OneNote or OneDrive integration with Word and like saving this and showing you who's logged in and who else is accessing these things. It's starting to happen, but then it feels like more often than not, it's like, oh, this doc is locked or didn't save or overwrote the old version, or OneDrive isn't syncing, or it's like my point is, this is Microsoft, and this is Word, which is probably the most popular like Windows application on the planet. And even Microsoft themselves can't like take Word and break it up into a million little pieces and make it run like all over the place, which is why we're like, just put it in a VM and run it, kind of like the old way. And so I feel like that's Edge is very interesting in terms of application architectures and cloud architectures, but it's not going to change the game for us in like EUC land, because again, our world is coming out of the Microsoft Windows legacy. And
Do you think
Sorry,
corporations should still invest in Windows endpoints?
Oh yeah, I mean there's plenty of cases where it makes sense to do that, and there's plenty of cases where it makes sense.
I totally agree. I mean,
not to do
first
that,
of all, there's anyone that says 100% is a fool, right? So you and I are both Mac guys. You take my Mac away, I'm gonna find you and beat you, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because corporations, I don't think most companies now are starting to get out of the game of caring about devices, especially now that even unmanned. Like look at how Microsoft, look at all the autopilot and out-of-box experience and like the work mode. I mean, Windows, you can have employees use their own Mac, their own Windows machine, and have it fully secured, and you can know it got secure boot, and you can know it's got the right image and all that kind of stuff on it, even if it's not owned by you and it doesn't have your asset tag on it. So I think that kind of saying that companies are generally starting to get out of that business of actually caring about like, you have my image, like, because that was the old days, right? My image must be on your machine. That's the only way I can know it's secure. You're in my domain, you're locked down. And now it's like, because the thing is, we were always one step behind anyway.
Smart IT does that. Smart IT people do that. But there's not always smart IT people.
Yeah, because there are people who they're holding on to a lot of old school. Because some people are like, well, but how do I know that it's secure? How do I know what drivers are installed? Like, I need to approve the drivers before they're installed.
Compliance,
I'm like, really?
GDPR, things like that.
Yeah, and it's funny.
I'm on your side. I just speak from experience.
Everyone who says like I got to approve drivers, I'm like, yeah. Did you approve that Syntaptics touchpad driver 3 years ago that had the keylogger in it? I bet you did, because everyone did. And the reality is that that the reason like people found out about this vulnerability was because of security software that they ran found out about it and like flagged it as like, you got a vulnerability here. So now I'm like, well, heck, if you have to wait until security software tells you if you have a vulnerability, then why are you in the business of pre-proving anything? Just let any user run anything they want, tied into a real-time security protection thing like Workspace ONE. We're doing the CVE integrations, and then you can auto-classify if it sees that there's a vulnerability on a device and has a threat score of 8 or higher. We could automatically quarantine the device. We could say, hey, you're not allowed to use anything locally on here we can block everything except for the Microsoft auto update sites and Horizon. Like if you want to work right now, we'll give you a Horizon desktop. We're going to disable clipboard mapping and all that kind of stuff so we don't infect anything. But until you get it set, you're done. So my point is that you can absolutely know and be rest assured that your computing environment is as secure as it can be, regardless of who actually has the asset tag on that endpoint. Not everyone is realizing that yet, but they're getting there, and I feel like that's pretty good.
Cool. I have 2 last questions for you, and then we'll move over to Bill and let you get on with your day. It's so early. Well, what time is it for you? Like 9:30 or something?
9:30. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 6:30 here for me. So, okay, these are sort of fun questions. Do you ever see yourself leaving VMware and building another website?
No.
Really?
Well, okay. No. You said, now this question has an and, so it requires both to be true for me to say yes. And if neither one is true, do I ever see myself leaving VMware? Of course. I mean, no plans right now, but like, sure. I'm 42, so I got plenty of work left. I do not see myself at VMware for 20 years. But building another website, absolutely not. Because the thing is, this gets into like philosophy and life happiness and all this kind of thing. I'll say one thing, and Doug, you and I have not talked about this, but I definitely like. I'm sure you'll agree. So a friend, there's a friend Mike and I who he's not an IT guy, but we're like buddies and drinking buddies and same age and all this kind of stuff. We both started businesses in the past, and we've said we've fantasized in some days like, man, what if I had my brain today transported back 20 years ago. Because my body is a 42-year-old body. I'm Pelotoning, I'm running, I'm stretching, but like I'm 42 and it's
50,
not getting better from
Brian.
here. Exactly. and like so my point is, I'm like, God, remember like when you wake up and it's like, oh God, or like you do something at night and like, I drank too much. It's like, you had one whiskey. Like, how's that too much? And it's like, man, to be 21 again. But if I put it's like, gosh, if I had my brain as a 21-year-old, like everything I knew now, the thing is, I would not succeed because I cannot work as hard as I worked back when I was 20. Like my brain will not allow that to happen because like, as we go through our career cycle, like in the younger years, you're just like all in so much. In like, look at your product in a box stuff you did, right? You talked about like Coca-Cola and cigarettes, like till 4 a.m., like 2 months in a row, right? Like doing this stuff. I mean, just boom, 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 boom. Like that's what we did back then. And we worked so hard. And I'm not working till 4 a.m. anymore. I sleep at night. And so people do not understand the amount of effort it takes to start and launch a business. It is nonstop hustle. It is nonstop worrying. It is nonstop. It is a lot of work. And I am super proud of the work that I've done. And I look at like BrianMadden.com, Bri from the books, some of like my greatest life accomplishments. Oh my gosh, I work so hard. I do not want to be a founder of a new company. I do not want to start a new company. It's so much work. And there are people like, not obviously there are people are in their 40s who will do this kind of thing. But for me personally, I'm out, man. Like this job is interesting. This technology is interesting. I've been doing it a long time. I would like to see where this industry goes. But the idea, like someone is asking a question about Bri Forum too. Like, is there gonna be another Bri Forum? Like, not for me. It's just, I did that already. And it was 20 years ago. And I just cannot, I'm dead. I'm the old growth, right? Like there's a younger generation coming up now that's doing amazing things. And you look at Johan van Amersfoort and the demos that he's doing around like machine learning, self-training, live migration, Mario. Dude, your industry now. Take it away, sir.
Sure.
Yeah, I couldn't do it again, man.
This year has been actually, I think I was talking to Jen about this. I think 2020 was my most productive year of my career. I still had the passion. IGEL gave me something that was quite interesting. It gave me back my desire to work. DABCC bored me after a while. You're doing the same thing over and over and over. And it was fun. You got to play with a lot of different technology. You were definitely privy to all these different companies that shared with you what they were doing, which was, a great privilege, right? But at the same time, it got boring. I've had a blast. I've worked more this year than ever. I also had something fun to do, which I thought was fun.
There's two things. I've spent so much time this past year thinking about fulfillment and life and happiness and what's it mean, and like we all have, right?
Sure.
Like fulfillment is the most important thing. Like doing work that you believe matters is critical. And one of the nice things about BrianMadden.com, even at Tech Target, is I felt fulfilled because there was readers. I felt we were actually helping people. I felt like we were, doing that kind of stuff. And you have to be careful because at a big vendor, like tweeting about a marketing webinar coming up is not fulfilling, right? That's not fun. But that's part of like the work. But what is fulfilling for me, so BrianMadden.com and being like a blogger and a website, I did that for 15 years, right? To your point, once you hit your 10,000 hours of expertise, it's like, yeah, click, next. It's autopilot. I could write an article like drunk and stoned at 2 a.m. and you wouldn't even know. I can crank articles out with my fingers. They can write it. It doesn't matter. No proofreading, just like click, post, done. Now, working at VMware, I've only been there 3 years. But it's not about VMware 3 years. It's like working at a vendor. Yeah, I worked at Compaq, I told you before, but I was in their consulting group. It wasn't a products guy. Now I'm working at a vendor where I get to work with product management and product marketing and the CTO office and our strategy and corporate strategy and sales and like all these, everything I do at VMware is like brand new stuff that I've never done before. And so now I'm year 3 is working for a vendor versus the website I did for 15 years. So I still have so much more. Like I'm like a tenderfoot when it comes to my knowledge of how like software is built and how, like, Sumit Dewan, who we all know, he's at VMware. At the time I joined VMware, he was the GM for EUC. And he told me before I joined, he said, look, if you join, this isn't brianmadden.com. This isn't your blog. Like, you have a lot of knowledge, but it's going to take you like a year to know what's going on here in the vendor and everything. And I was like, whatever, dude. 3 months in, I'm like, I got this. 6 months later, I was like, oh, now I understand it. 6 months after that, I'm like, okay, I didn't know anything there, but now I know. Now I'm 2 years, now I'm 3 years. Now, like, even this year, I was talking with some of my colleagues and looking at like the philosophy of how software is built and how you manage it. Like, there's just so much interesting stuff at software vendors that is really all brand new to me.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea of like pivot your career to do something new, but that builds upon all your old information. So I know the context of the industry. I know this industry and the technology and the players and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm doing with it is completely new. So I never want to be a website operator again. And I never want to be a consultant again, because I did each of those for like 10 years. And so now I'll probably, work at a vendor for 10 years or whatever. And then, I don't know, figure out what's next. I couldn't even guess in the future. But I like the idea of like changing up what you're doing. And that's what really keeps it interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember joining Citrix, and I was in San Francisco, and I was heading down the 101 to the CBC. My boss had just picked me up, and he asked me, what did you think of your first day? It was my second day on the job. I said, oh, I really loved it. I got to see the new products that were coming out. I was like, I got to see the betas. Back then you didn't see any of this stuff, right? Nobody did. And he's like, oh, what did you like? And I was like, I really like this CWC. Do you remember this by chance? It was the Citrix web console, right?
Yep.
He's like, oh, really? You like that? And I was like, yeah, I really think that's a great idea. I was like, it's a website. I was like, I can give it to help desk people. They can reset sessions. He goes, oh, really? I goes, oh, interesting. He goes, what do you think that took to build? I was like, I don't know, man. I could write that in a weekend. I was like, if I could write it in a weekend, I was like, these guys want a few hours? It's like, yeah, it didn't take him a few hours. And he starts peeling the layers off the onion, right? And he starts going, okay, what do you think it costs? What about QA? You didn't realize we QA. Hey, we have 50 other or 500 other features we want to add. What do you think dropped from the plate, right? Because we can't add them all, and then he gets done and he says, what do you think it cost? Because of all this. I was like, oh, I don't know, and I realized, oh, this was expensive. And he goes, do you think it was a good product? And I was like, no, I don't. And it really changed my opinion on how, and then sometimes I'll listen to engineers, and no offense to engineers, but somebody that hasn't worked for a vendor or saw the sausage factory called a software company, right? That'll say, hey, why is this checkbox here? Why haven't we changed this? Got rid of infuse from the conf files. Right? It's like, okay, yeah, you want to do that, and then you're going to complain about no new features. It's like you don't have a clue what you're talking about, And it really opens up your eyes on how all this stuff works.
Yeah, all I gotta say is, man, my experience working at VMware so far I've learned a lot, and one of the things I've learned is I do not want to be a product manager. Hats
I always
off
wanted
to
to
them.
be a product manager. It's the one job I've always done that I've always wanted to do, but now I won't do it, because I realize it's a lot of politics. It's a lot of, you're not really building the product. You're basically being a little worker guy for everyone else.
Well, and it's kind of, the analogies the analogies I've heard too is like, do it with like, use marbles or like ping pong balls or whatever, and be like, okay, here's everything you need to do and everything you want to do. You have 10 ping pong balls, just put them in the buckets of what you want. It's like, well, I need like 45 more ping pong balls. And it's like, yeah, you got 10.
Yeah.
Do you want it? Like, and that's what their life and then you have people like me who are like Yahoos out in the, I'm not in the product management org, right? I talk to our product managers and I'm like, oh my gosh, why can't you create this? How's it taking 6 months? And it's like, well, because and then they explain that and I'm like,
yeah. There's an old, Brian, do you remember a guy named Philippe Kahn? Do you know that name by chance?
I don't think so.
He was the founder and CEO at Borland Software way back when Borland was the programming language powerhouse. And he came up with Philippe Kahn's 3 rules of software craftsmanship. And I've never forgot this. And it says, there's 3 rules, but then one of the rules is this. And it says, you can, in order to create a software, there's 3 things you can have, or 3 things you require. You require it to be on time, feature rich, and stable. The problem is you can only pick 2.
So it's like fast, cheap, and easy. It's their version of that. Pick 2. Yeah,
you can only pick 2. Now, Steve Jobs was one that could get that out. He was very good at getting all 3, but he ran a cult of personality, right? And most
people don't like. Yeah, and people don't like working in that environment. Amazon's the same way. Like, I'm reading that new book. Like the Invent and Wander. So it came out a couple weeks ago about Jeff Bezos, and it's like, you can work hard, you can work smart, and you can work long, whatever it is, I guess, fast. Yeah, fast, work smart, work fast, and work hard. He said at Amazon, you don't get to pick 2 out of 3. But that doesn't
sleep fast.
That doesn't really make sense. You can't, if you only have 2 ping pong balls, you can't put them in 3 buckets. And then you have to decide. And that's the thing too, man. Like, I'm far enough, I'm deep enough into my life that I recognize that, I cannot get my satisfaction out of work. I mean, work has to not be annoying, but my life happiness is not related to what I do in my day job. I make enough money to live on comfortably. If I made more money, it would go in the bank, which is great, but like, it also doesn't change my life, right? Like I have, if I make more than I spend, it doesn't matter whether you make 100 grand a year or 500 grand or $1 million a year. If you're living on 90 grand, you're so like, I don't want to work 10x harder to make 10x the salary. Cause like, I don't need it. Like I'm I've got everything I need here. And so it really comes down to just like, I want to be fulfilled at work. I want to feel like what I do matters. And I want work to make it so like, I don't want to like hate my job. But beyond that, like being fulfilled and not hating the job, that's pretty much all I can ask for nowadays. And it's such a different perspective than when I was, in my 20s and even in my 30s, quite frankly.
I think I totally get you. IGEL's been, especially, being able to grow the IGEL community, because when I joined, it was, hey, you're an evangelist. You can build the community thing on the side, whatever that is. Although Jed was always supportive, he got it completely. So then once we proved that, hey, this is something I should be doing full time, that's been a lot of fun. I've had as much fun. I tell people all the time, I've had as much fun in my past two years that I did any time in my career, even my early Citrix days. Because I get a bit, and Jed also jokes too, you managed to build a company inside my company. I was like, exactly. And he goes, you don't pay attention to anyone else, only the people I want to. So it's given me something that's been a lot of fun, So
I feel like you finally have the job that like matches up to what you actually want to do. Like VP of Community.
Yeah.
That's Doug Brown.
I love it. I've had a blast, man.
You were very community focused at Citrix, but it's like you also had a day job, so to speak, and then you were doing that.
In Citrix, no, that's a podcast, or that's a conversation, a long conversation. I don't want to crack that egg, but in those days, what Rick and I were doing, along with Rick and I and maybe Flanagan and Vinny and with Inside Citrix, nobody else was doing. There was no blog. The word blog wasn't there. You did not share information, right? It was truly blowing against the wind and flipping them off in the process, right? So it was a whole different world. It wasn't that we were, so visionaries. It's that we just engineers trying to help each other. It was just a completely different world back then. But hey, one last question, and you mentioned Citrix. I've been asking a few guys. Make this one short. We got to get to Bill. But what do you think of the new Citrix logo? You've been around Citrix for as long as anyone. What do you think of the new Citrix logo? There's a good one for you.
I'm not a fan.
I'll give you my view at the end. I'll ask Bill too, because he was there when it was the original logo. So.
I mean, I get it, but I feel like this logo is like too trendy. It doesn't appear to me like this is a logo that is able to last forever. So I like, I don't know. I don't, but then again, like, who moved my cheese?
Yeah. You're the second one. Greenberg, I did a podcast with him and I was like, did you just throw Who Moved My Cheese reference out on me? He's like, yeah. I did. I was like,
look
awesome,
it up, kids.
I got the book right here, man. It has Arlo's, it's actually Arlo's book. He gave it to me. It has Arlo's name in it. Anyway, I like that. When the problem with the Citrix logo is it's been around so long that it's iconic to the people that have been there. And it's it's
I wish they
amazing.
freshened it, like lighten up the font, the typeface a little bit. It's like really heavy and thick and looks like a 70s logo. Like lighten it up a little bit without like this T with like no cross, and it's like an upside down L, and it's just.
Oh,
And now it's
I
like,
like
what's
it,
it? Is it purple? Is it teal? Is it? I don't know.
So at first I was very anti. I was like, oh, that's, and I was like, but calm down, Doug. You didn't like iOS 7 when it came out either. You were like, give me the ugly, whatever. If you look back at the early iOS, you're like, what the hell? That was decent. But I like it nowadays. I do. I don't like the purple. I'm not a big fan of purple, but I do like the logo. But I agree with you. I don't know how long that'll stick. The other thing is Slack. When they changed from the Slack, the hashtag thing, I was like, what the hell are you guys doing? And now I look back at the hashtag and I think, oh, that's sort of ugly compared to the new logo. It's just sort of
that is true. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Brian, well, we got to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is really a lot of fun. I was sort of worried about going a little bit too or not having enough. But then I thought that's never going to happen. So poor Bill's like, do I get any time at all?
Anytime. This is much more interesting.
So
I just want to say, like, I saw, dude, man, thank you so much. I'm just looking at the Q&A. Patrick, still doing pinball. I got 3 pinball machines right here. Like me hitting a pinball machine. They're within striking distance. So yes.
I was going to ask you that. There's a lot of questions, and either way.
Hey, anything about pinball automatically gets put up to the top.
I have a good friend of mine. I should introduce you to him. Actually, he's in Seattle, and his father was an anesthesiologist, so they had a little bit of money. And his basement with this, I'm 50 now, so this is the early 80s and in the mid 80s when we were kids back then, and he had must have 20 pinball machines. And yes, and really old at that time, not the new one, but and my friend Chad, he has 1 or 2 up in Seattle that he brought. One is Captain Fantastic or some.
Oh my God, that's an Elton John one. That machine is amazing. It's one of my favorites of all time. It's an old mechanical one with the dial wheels for the scoring and.
He has that, and I whenever I go to his place, I loved going to Seattle so much, I go stay. He lived right up in Queen Anne, and I wouldn't stay in the hotel that I got for free from Citrix or whomever, right? I would stay at his flat and sleep on the couch, which I always woke up like, oh, why did I do that? But we had so much fun. So
if you're still here, I'm in Fremont, so I'm sorry.
What is your favorite pinball machine? You have a favorite?
Okay, so asking favorite pinball machine is like asking about favorite movie. Like it's like, oh, well, is it the one I like to play the most? Is it the one I favorite? Is it most nostalgic? Is it the one I go to? Is it I think I'm gonna say 2, Attack from Mars, which is sitting right here. I've got, for anyone pinball, I've got Batman 66, Monster Bash, and Attack from Mars here in my basement. I believe so. Attack from Mars is a favorite. I'm gonna say Roadshow also, which is a pinball machine from the 90s. Attack from Mars is 90s also, but it has like these 2 characters, like these construction helmets in back, and they're like going across country like with bulldozers wrecking things. So I'd probably say like Roadshow is my favorite. It's very nostalgic to me and I love it, but it's a go-to play every day. Like Attack from Mars I play probably every night. And Roadshow, actually Roadshow's in Gabe's basement right now in Omaha, but Roadshow I feel like is my favorite, but Attack from Mars is like my daily, I just play the hell out of that machine.
Cool. Okay, Brian, we got to get to Bill before since you wasted 2 hours. Actually, it's never a waste hanging out. This is always fun, isn't it?
I'm going to while you're talking, Bill, I'm going to finish my IGEL community registration, and then I'm going to go to workspacecoolplace.com and see what that is all about.
Yeah, you got to watch that lady, by the way. She's a real trip.
Hey, Doug, is the contest still open? I might need to refresh.
I think so. Usually we goes till the end of the year. I think so. I think I did something yesterday with Carl.
I think we gave away one of them. So what it is, just so everybody knows, it's a when the pandemic kicked in, everybody had to go to home office. Everybody's like, all right, I got a really lame home office, and I need a new chair, and I want some decorations. So we did a contest where we're giving away 2 home office makeovers. And I think we gave one away already, which was maybe the smaller prize, like the $5,000 one. And then the other one, which I think is still pending out there, is either a 10 or maybe more one, where they'll basically sit down, you can come to your space and say, all right, what do you want to do with this 10 grand? And we have this designer, this lady who will come in and lay it all out for you. She'll buy it, they'll install it, and do everything for you. So that's the promo that we started.
That is awesome.
I
That
always
is
wanted
rad.
to. I always thought what we should do is the grand prize winner, the IT baller guys, should come in and pimp their office.
Yeah.
Like so much sledgehammers, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, just full blown, you know.
Yeah,
would
but
take
go do check it out, everybody else, because it actually, she shows you some really cool stuff and different designs and things she can do, and it's pretty neat.
Very neat.
Yeah, hopefully one is still open. Hopefully they're both not closed out, but there were 2 prizes, and like Doug said, I think we always do the big one, like the Tesla giveaway at the end of the year. So hopefully that's still in play. Yeah. And Doug, I don't have a whole lot to talk about. I mean, I was just kind of here to hang out with you guys, and
Well, maybe you could just tell us, Bill, your job at IGEL is you do a few things, but one of the things is you manage the VMware relationship. And, you mentioned a few things you can't talk about, but what can you talk about? What's the latest from that relationship? If somebody was a VMware customer, and there's probably many VMware customers on the line right now that came to hear Brian, why would they be interested in IGEL, like in the sense of what are we doing that's unique? What's new, things like that. Can you share any of that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Doug, is that although we've been partners with VMware for, like I said, since probably 2008 with, VDM, which became View and Horizon, we haven't really just dug in deeply to kind of talk to VMware and say, so what's next for you? Where are you going? And how do we kind of enhance that and make that better or integrate into it or something like that? Like what we're doing, the secret scroll thing I talked about before, and that's kind of what my job really is. It's not only to keep up and make sure we have the most recent version of the Linux client to run on Horizon 8 and that stuff. But I mean, one simple little thing we did this year is we got included in VMware's test drive. So now our management system is stood up in test drive. So if you have an IGEL UD Pocket, you can connect in, go to test drive and connect it to the management system and look at all the configurations and all the things you can do and all that fun stuff. So I've done a lot of simple little things in the past 6 months. We just haven't really had the chance to do because we didn't have anybody really focusing, on the role. So keeping up to date and once again, Workspace One is an awesome product. It's pretty much the #1 modern management system, for Gartner and all those guys. And we hadn't really taken a hard look at it before. And I got connected with a couple of the product managers early on, and we were talking about things like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? How do we connect them? And we came up with some ideas together, and that's in process right now. And Brian, I'm going to send you a video that I think you'll like to take a look at. It's like a 5-minute video, and it shows you the concept. But really, that's been my job, Doug, and it's been fun because I had been in sales forever. Starting in '95 with Citrix, I was the regional sales guy, then management, and man, I got burned out on that quick. And so taking this role in alliances and really working with partners on strategic stuff has been awesome. It's been so much fun, and so 2020 for a lot of people, like, God, I can't wait till it's over. Terrible year. For me, it's actually been nice to kind of change or shift careers and, do something different. So it's been fun. And VMware's been great to work with. We talked to Sean and Barath and Kieran last week, a week before last, about, kind of stuff that we're doing moving forward and roadmaps. And, it's funny, you mentioned Sumit Dewan. Sumit and I worked together at Citrix. He slept over at my house a couple of times, and we used to travel around. So being reconnected with him. And I don't know if you don't know a guy named Frank Neidham in the healthcare group, but Frank's great. He runs essentially the healthcare organization at VMware, and we're developing solutions together with them and how to make the workflow for hospital workers a lot more seamless and simple, and badging in and badging out and swapping desktops and all that fun stuff. So it's been cool to work with a company like VMware and develop different solutions that are gonna ultimately benefit the end user, which is what it's all about. So yeah, that's kind of my elevator pitch on kind of what I'm doing, and we'll continue to keep it moving with VMware, do more and more stuff, and even started to look in some of the other business units outside of EUC, and maybe things that we can do with them that'll cross over, which would be interesting. Right now, we're very focused on EUC, but I see in about 6 months some opportunities to do things with more the modern application group and some other divisions within the company. So yeah, it's been fun though. It's been fun. It's been great working with VMware, and relationships better than it's ever been between IGEL and VMware. So yeah,
it's wonderful.
Man.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you. I thank you both, and I thank you. You know, we got 2 minutes left, so not that we need to use that 2 minutes. Not like we need to ramble. It's not a TV show, but I thank you guys all. I hope you enjoyed the event, and you know, like I said, we have another one coming up with our CTO in just 2 weeks. And then definitely check in with us, because when you think of the IGEL community, you think of, if you're not an IGEL customer or an IGEL community member currently, you might think, hey, we're just going to talk about IGEL. Well, we're definitely going to do that, and there's a lot of reasons why we should and why you would want to hear us. But we also are bringing on guys like Brian and Dennis that we mentioned earlier. And we last month we had Chris Fleck with us, which is always a blast, right, Brian? And so maybe Sunday we could get Sean on. I've been meaning to reach out to Sean. So Sean Bass is one of the most amazing people on earth. So he would be.
Yeah, his brain.
Does he ever do anything? Does he do things like that anymore?
Oh yeah, he's like Nutanix. You know, Ruben's doing that big Nutanix thing on December 7th.
Oh, that's right. I did see that. Yeah.
Sean will be at that. That's a good one. Is that what is Monday? I think the 7th.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, and Sean, man. Okay, so like I knew Sean like the way you knew Sean, like kind of just as a community member, like over the years. Now that I actually work for the guy, I know him in a way different way. And let me tell you what, his brain works as fast as his mouth. Like he's just, it doesn't matter. I don't know how he does it. His brain is working at a higher level. Absolutely. His brain works at a higher level.
You remember the old CTP meetings? I remember the early CTP meetings. We'd all sit in there and bitch and whine and moan and complain. And everyone's, hey, what about this? Hey, move the checkbox. And all of a sudden, Sean would raise his hand all politely, and everyone would be quiet. And I would just sort of be doodling. And I'd be, and what came out of his mouth was perfect. And then the product manager or VP or whomever was like, because Sean either put him in his place, not meaningful or not in a mean way, right? But the guy's brilliant. The other thing about him is that you can walk down a hallway, he'll be with two VPs or, the president of Gwanda or something, and he'll stop and talk to me, or he'll see someone else, hey, how are you doing? Nice to see you. How's the family? I got to run, but I just want to say hi. He's just a wonderful guy. Out of all the people I know from the UC space, he's definitely on the top shelf of just the nicest and definitely smartest people. There's so many smart guys in this space, right? So, you don't want to alienate it, but Sean is, man, he's second to none. I'll definitely give him that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean,
I like whenever you bring up Sean, I have to say this. It's like
I feel like the thing about me that I feel like he just knows a lot about a lot of stuff. Like it can be, if you ask a question like, "Oh, I'm thinking about this," he's like, "Well, in that space, blah blah blah." He's like, "Well, this vendor's in that." Like he just seems like know the whole, like all the vendors and what they're doing and all this sort of thing, and just knowing everybody. He's a great CTO. He's the reason that I do not want to be CTO ever of any company, because I do not possess those skills, and it's a lot of work to get there. He just really knows a lot of stuff. He sits up to date. So
whenever I see him, though, I always like to say, it's like, Sean, you're better than me in every single way, except for one. In 2005, I went to Bri Forum, and I remember I was in Chicago. No, it was in DC. And he argued Softricity with me. And he said, well, I don't know what that will never amount to. It's a bad idea. And I was like, no, you got to understand. You got to this. So not whenever I see him, but it's something will come up. And I say, remember, I was right once.
And we've, and it's funny too, because when we're working together 15, 20 years, this is a lot of interactions like that.
Yeah. Once in 15, I knew him. I barely knew him in those days, but
I mean, he's the important thing for someone who's a leader is to, listen and take a lot of perspectives. And I feel like it's important for positions to change. In politics in America right now, it's seen as a negative, as to flip-flop. Well, you were saying that. Well, before you were saying that. It's like, yeah, because when we have new data, we change our positions on things. And even like my view on VDI now is very different than what it was when I wrote the VDI Delusion. Shouldn't it be? I mean, I'm 8 years more of experience. I would hope that I go back and be like, oh gosh, I thought that. Wow. Like everything, we are always adding new data into our, brains, and then we think about it, and that's changing our position. So I feel like changing a position is not a negative.
As long as you can back it up. It's not just, in politics, it tends to be more, it's not for...
Right. My team said do this, so now I think
yes, exactly. So I'm on it. But we used to joke about this all the time. I'd always say, Brian, that you always have a master. Don't fool yourself. But the independent thing, right? What is it like working for VMware where you're non-independent, right? I mean, we are in a way, right? It's like when I went to Citrix, I swore to myself I'd try to remain independent. But of course, you realize that you can't be, right? You have to. There's certain things. Has that been tough for you? Has it been like, oh, I'm just so sick of all that? It's, I'm happy. I love what I'm doing. I'm, sort of this is washed away. What do you?
I think it's important. Okay. So it's important to recognize what areas you want to, like dig into and what areas don't really matter. Like I'll give a great example. So when TechTarget bought BrianMadden.com, they gave us full editorial control. They never said any, they never tried to change any articles. They never edited anything. I didn't get in trouble for anything I wrote, nothing like that. But TechTarget, a publicly traded company, they manage expenses and they manage their bottom line and everything. And Bryform, in some ways, it got worse under TechTarget because it was more like a big corporation that did a lot of events in those days. So it was more formulaic to what they were doing. But it was also better with TechTarget because they had actual professional organizers and better, this kind of stuff here and there. But some of the little things I lost the battles on, I want a real breakfast. No, I take it back. We had real breakfast. But I remember some little things where we would lose the battle. We did it in one of the Bryforms that was in the basement of a Hilton in London, which I hated. And I did not want to pick that. And I never would pick that venue myself. But I'm not going to go on the blog and be like, fuck you, TechTarget, for ruining Bryforum. Because it's that's the hand that feeds you. Be cool. So it's the same kind of thing. I think you just have to understand where, you have to understand everyone's perspectives and what they're trying to do and figure out what's important. And so there's some things where it is worth me going for the mat on, and other things, it's it's a big company, it's a big organization, and it's going to be the way it is, and that's okay. And just pick areas of focus, and so I think for me, because I had sold BrianMadden.com to TechTarget, that was my soft, stepping into the corporate world where they were kind of
very good point.
And they were great, and so VMware, it's it's fine. I'm not gonna VMware. Obviously, they make decisions and they make product decisions that I don't agree with, but it's Jeff Bezos talks about, disagree and commit. And so, we can all be in the room in the leadership meeting or whatever, bam, and when the decision's made, it's okay, this is the decision. Okay, we are all going in this direction. And they will passionately listen, but when the decision's made, I don't want to go out and be VMware's doing this, but that's wrong. They should be doing this. This is awful. Dial it back, dude. It's fine. And so I feel for me, I've always been that way. So I think my VMware career is solid, is secured. There are people though who wash out of vendors because they come in as independent consultants and kind of go crazy independent, and you're just you work at a company now, you have to because the thing is, it's a trade-off. It's I would never trade, but you know what? You know how many times my paycheck I've worried about whether my paycheck is going to come or not since working at VMware? 0 times. You know how many times I worry about that?
That's the difference between working for yourself. Yeah, exactly. Working for yourself is always fine and dandy, but really what you do is just spend a lot of time chasing money. Please pay me.
It's a hustle. It's a hustle.
It's a hustle.
And I took 2 weeks off this summer. And guess what? I still got paid.
I get 30
there's a lot of
vacation.
advantages.
I'm a German employee, so they give me 30 days vacation. I still have 25, I think. But,
and you can vanish for a month.
I'm not going anywhere. So I have more. I think I have 20 days left. Anyway, hey, you know what? We started episode 2, I guess. So we better quit here. Thank you so much, Brian. You take care. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. I did invent a holiday called Crispin. It's Christmas beginning. And it was on the 28th, it was on Saturday, and we put up because in Germany, they put up the Christmas tree on the day before Christmas, so on Christmas Eve. I was well, that's a waste. I was we need to celebrate. I'm American. We got to go big, bigger. So I created Crispin, and it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and we go Griswold on the house, and we have to give each other a gift.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I bought matching pajamas.
Fantastic.
Let's see that picture.
Yeah, I don't see it. When I was younger, I cared about those things. Nowadays, I just torment the poor wife.
I'm surprised you're not wearing the bottoms of them right now.
Oh, he is. Or no pants.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we should do. Is everyone stand up? And are you wearing?
Isn't that funny though? Sometimes if you are going to stand up, you have to like, am I wearing pants? Yes. Okay, we can stand up.
No, I only wear pants. I do have pants on, but I do have my flannel pants. I always wear those. The house pants.
Yeah.
So they're
haven't touched a belt since March.
Yeah, when I walk outside, when I go, because So anyway. Hey, Brian, thank you. Thank you all for joining. If you're still with us, God help you. Bill, thank you so much. And
thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Thanks, Bill.
Bye, guys.
Everybody.
All right, take care.
Later.
Thanks, Brian.